Today we will be looking at the Chapter 10 test video number 1, where we will be exploring differences in proportions. The problem explains how a Gallup poll of 1,240 randomly selected teens conducted in 2001 found that boys were more likely than girls to play video games by a margin of 57% to 35%. If an equal number of boys and girls were surveyed, test an appropriate hypothesis to tell whether there's enough evidence to claim that boys play video games more than girls. So let's start off working through this problem by outlining our parameters. We have two different samples. We have our boys and we have our girls. So we know the sample size is just going to be half of our 1240 because there's an equal number of boys and girls. So that comes out to 620. And it states how our proportion is 57% or 0.57. And our number of successes is just going to be the product of our sample size and our proportion. So 620 times 0.57 comes out to be 353. And for our girls, we have the other half, which comes to 620 as well. Our proportion is stated to be 35%. And the number of successes for our girls is 620 times 0.35 or 217. So here we are working with proportions. So we're going to conduct a z-test, and we have two different samples. So we're going to state, after doing our state plan to conclude method, here we will conduct a two-sample z-test to tell, this is what our goal is, to tell whether there is enough evidence to claim that boys play video games more than the girls. So as part of our plan step, we are going to want to outline our hypotheses, as that's what we will be testing today. So our null hypothesis, H naught, is going to be that the two proportions are equal. Because we're testing whether there's evidence to claim that there's this difference that boys have greater. So our alternative hypothesis is therefore going to be that P1 is greater than 2. The proportion of boys who play is greater than that of girls. So then we are going to need to check our conditions before moving on. So we are going to check for randomness. And above, the problem states that the teens are randomly selected. So for that, we are good to go. Then for large counts, we're going to have to check N1, P1, and Q1. Q is just 1 minus P, and then N2, P2, and N2, Q2. So N1, P1, that's just going to be 620 times 0.57, which 353, so that's greater than 10. So greater than or equal to 10. And then Q would just be the 1 minus the P, so 0.43. And then N2, P2. So these are all going to come out to be greater than 10, clearly, as we're working with our N being 620 and multiplying by these large fractions, so they will be greater than 10. And then our 10% rule, independence, that does check out. as there are clearly more than 12,400 teens. Is clear. So after checking the conditions and stating our hypotheses, we are going to actually conduct our study. So we'll be doing a two prop portions, or two prop z-tests. And we'll be working with an alpha level of 0.05 today after considering our p-value. Come back to that later. So if we open up our Inspire and we go to statistics, stats test, and our two prop z-test, we're going to enter our successes for the boys, which is going to be 353, our sample size of 620, and then 217 successes for the girls and 620 as well. And then our alternative hypothesis that the boys are greater than the girls. They play more video games. I'm going to enter. And here we see that our p-value is this really small number, really small, 4.7 times 10 to the negative 15th. So p-value, 4.7 times, is that what it was? 4.7 times 10 to the negative 15th. That is clearly drastically less than our alpha level of 0.05. So from this, we know that we are going to reject the null hypothesis that P1 equals P2. So therefore, in our conclusion, including the last step, therefore, we conclude that we reject the null hypothesis, and thus there is, in fact, enough evidence to claim that boys play video games more than girls. And we have to make sure to note that this is at a significance level of 0.05. All right, so for our differences in proportion study, after conducting our two prop z tests, we're able to conclude that we're going to reject the null hypothesis, and thus we are able to validate that there's enough evidence to claim that boys play video games more than girls. Thank you.